And thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. I am currently at the MDV's office, Malaysian Debt Ventures office, here to speak to the chairman of MDV. He's also the MP for Subang, Yang Berhormat Wong Chen. Wong Chen has always been a spokesperson for PKR and of course Pakatan Harapan, as well as Pakatan Rakyat before this on budget. So it's actually quite timely for us to talk on not just about the budget, but of course his role in MDV as well. YB, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us. Maybe we can walk through with us with the key topics of the day.
Okay, yeah. I totally agree. This is the first ever budget. I would say that the earlier budget in February was not really. It was the old budget that we had to adopt. So as you know, Madani has 6 core principles. It's sustainability, it's prosperity, innovation, respect, trust, and also compassion. But in terms of the budget issue, you will probably look at the issue regarding sustainability, innovation mostly. Yeah, mostly. Trust and respect, all those are kind of political. So to me, the budget will focus primarily on this new energy transition roadmap, NETR. It's also our redesigning the economies to be more greener, to be more sustainable, and with a longer term target of of getting net zero. Personally, I would like to see it much faster, but we do understand the economy needs some time to reshape itself. But let's hit the major motherhood statements and the major core principle, and then work towards the budget issue, which is always operating and development expenditure.
You know, you touched on a very important point. Achieving long-term sustainable goals and objectives versus the as-is demand of today. That has always been the Prime Minister or Finance Minister that is going to be presenting the budget. How do you think this Finance Minister is going to balance that whole idea of operational and development budget expenditure versus trying to get things done today and achieving the long-term goals that you guys set to do?
Well, in reality, we are restricted by the fiscal position. As you know, the debt is 1.6 trillion. Servicing the debt is going to hit about 40 to 50 billion alone, just on the interest rate alone. So when governments talk about having operating budget and spending more on DVAX and scaling back operating, it's hard to do so. That is a known fact. In particular, if we have a heavy subsidy system that we have inherited, then if you cut subsidies, people are suffering. If you want to spur the economy, you need to develop. But in order to develop, you need to cut subsidies so that you can release some money for development spending. So I think what will really happen in this particular one is to set the perimeters and give the clear indication which direction we're going. So the absolutely clear one from my friend Rafizi and also PMX is that they're going to have a targeted subsidy scheme, right? So the subsidy is about 60, 70, 80, potentially 90 billion, depending on the price of oil. Then a targeted system could reduce it by 20%. So if you reduce 20%, say the subsidy is at normal of 40, 50 billion, 20% of that is basically 10 billion, then you got 10 billion extra to move towards development expenditure.
You know, just yesterday, Rafizi was talking about this whole idea of T20 M40 B40 restructuring, particularly on the Pangkalan Data Utama or PADU that is going to be developing this understanding of how we're going to classify people. Do you feel that these kind of items are actually quite critical for us to understand?
Oh, absolutely. Brother, I mean, you go anywhere in the world, people talk about data-driven policy making. Our data is rubbish. You know, the previous governments have not worked on data too often. They've been collecting data, ministry has been collecting data for the longest time. They've never collated and then compiled into one major database. And then, you know, I suppose in the previous governments, they were working in silos. You know, this is what they always say. PADU is meant to bring everything in. And if we use the proper algorithm, we can actually put in elements of behavioral economics, not just data-driven economics. Then you merge these two, behavioral economics and the big data that you collate, you can get a clearer picture. I mean, to the extent that you can know. So for instance, like a 28-year-old woman in Kuala Terengganu, what are her priorities? What are her earnings? You can actually project, even without collecting the data, you can actually paint a picture what is her options, how she's spending. But of course, direct interviews, collecting more and more data is better. Now, once we have that big data, which we must protect at all costs, then you can say, okay, this particular community needs more, right? This group of people who are poorer needs more. Then you can really plan it. Then it becomes really targeted.
So as you can see, I'm bringing a few elements here. Targeted data, trying to get behavioral economics into place, trying to understand unit economics of each and every single individual in this country so that we can get our target subsidies in order, so that we can bring our fiscal position to a better level. Of course, one of the key positions of Madani is trying to bring the fiscal deposit to 3.5%, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, over the next 3 years. Do you feel that all these ingredients are in place and we're seeing things in the process? Are you happy with the development of this government?
No, I think it's absolutely right. You've got to collect data first. So data will be the main thing, right? But the theme for next year will be renewable energy. That is quite clear. Then that is trying to drive us towards, reinventing around 10 to 20% of the economy to be really renewable. And the spillover is humongous. So let's start with data first. If you agree that we're going to spend X amount, this is where we have to ask the minister, how much are they going to really spend on this data collection? And if the quality data is so good, then it makes all our expenditure, allocation of funding to be precise, and therefore no wastage. I think the spillover could be around 10-20 billion in savings even. Of course, how to manage subsidy reduction, how to get to this 3.5% deficit, right? A healthy deficit level. Requires implementation. I mean, fundamentally, data-driven implementation. Then, it has to. Some people may lose out, right? For instance, I mean, if a person in KL with a BMW is getting subsidized fuel, subsidized petrol, of course he's going to be very angry by the time we figure out that he has a BMW, doesn't need subsidy.
But one would argue that the disposable income of such an individual may not necessarily be so much big if you actually calculate the debt versus the income of the individual.
No, precisely. I do know. But we can't tap into his financial data. That's wrong, right? Okay, so we're making guesses on big data collection. But he must also understand he should scale down to a smaller car if he can't afford, right? So it's just that the government needs to make sure that we're not subsidizing the super rich.
Yeah.
Typical, I mean, a very simple analogy. If you're a Grab rider, you're delivering food, you use a motorbike, full tank is 5, 6, 7 ringgit, right? You probably need for the entire year, not entire year, the entire month, probably a budget of around $50 at most, even as a rider. But a BMW owner comes in there, pumps in, is $120, $140 per pump, and that's 450, 500 ringgit a month. So the current subsidy scheme gives 500 subsidy to the BMW guy, but only gives $50 to the people that actually need more. So when you remove those layer, and we're not saying that middle class people will be hit to zero. It's just we need to know the right sweet spot, right? So we can reduce maybe 100, 200 for the BMW owner, and move up the $50 subsidy to the poor to that 100 extra.
Are you expecting this budget to elucidate further the subsidy rationalization, or you think that's still going to be discussed down the road?
No, I would like to see the initial start of it, right? Because you can't really start the subsidy without data. If we collect the data, and we collate the data earlier, say within 6 months, because first you got to approve the budget to collate data, and then you roll out data. You get 6 months data. Is not, some data can be pretty fixed, but you got to factor in holidays, spending patterns, things external, sending money overseas. Like for instance, like in September, all the parents are scratching their head how to send out money to foreign students, right?
Yeah, me too.
You too.
I'm literally,
So we need the entire year data, but it doesn't mean that we have to wait for the entire year. We can start with 6 months. So you will see the rationalizing of subsidy, I would imagine, to start in June, July.
Okay. Wow, June, July next year?
Yeah, if they start to collect the first 6 months, first they get a budget, the budget kicks in 1st January, then they have the budget to collect data, right? So they'll get 3 months data, 3 months data. So even if the 3 months data for core basic issues, for especially poor people not sending kids out in September to go to UK, right now. Yeah, they're not planning a holiday to Japan or Disneyland. So even the 3 months or 6 months data is good enough for you to tinker around with subsidy adjustment.
That would still mean the government needs to allocate maybe 40 to 50 billion of subsidy, at least for the first half of the year, assuming we don't do data.
Yeah. So I don't see a shock system. I see, like, middle class
gradual.
has to come down and understand, right? So they also need time to adjust their lifestyle. But more importantly, we have to help the poor. And that's the point of Madani government. For too long, the B40, now B60, right? I think it's tough, I mean, there are so many global pressure, hyperinflation, global issue. All these issues are really hitting the people. And the government has fiscal constraint. So what we need to do is we need to adjust those people who are taking most of the subsidies and reduce some of these and push it down to the lower level.
You were mentioning just now about the 10 to 20 catalytic industries, so to speak, when it comes to energy transition. But the pressing matter at hand of today, and by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you, of course that's very important. Climate change is still the number one crisis that we need to tackle. But the everyday concerns include food security. The inflation, if you strip down per sector, telecommunications, inflation has really gone down. Education has gone up, health has gone up, and food security has gone terribly high.
Let me take this opportunity to address the issue of food security. Food security, most people get the wrong idea that you have to plant all your food or plant a certain percentage of your own food. Food security essentially is it's a matrix of a few points. Yeah? Point number one is affordability. That is really food security. If food is cheap and people can afford to buy the food, you have 100% food security, right? For instance, noodles. This morning I went to have breakfast with my wife. I paid 22 ringgit for 2 bowls of noodle, right? I mean, this is now normal, for Chinese noodles.
You're an MP of Subang, I presume it's in Subang or...
No, it's not. It's in Sri Atamas. It's not what I call upmarket restaurant. It's just like a typical semi-hawker kind of thing. The corner lot, right? To be fair, I paid for 2 drinks as well. So the noodle is about $8, right? In Singapore, you can go down and pay 3 Sing dollars.
Yeah, actually.
So Singapore has a much better food security than us, but Singapore does not plant anything in substantial amount. They don't have farmland. We have a lot more.
Yeah,
right?
Agriculture for GDP is actually below 1% for Singapore.
So food security is really about affordability, number one. Number two, food security is about your silos that you can keep food, your storage, your logistics to deliver food. Singapore had no problem; it's just a small state, right? So they are actually ranking very, very high in food security. Malaysia, if we improve logistical things, if we spend more money on ability to ship the pekan, all the food from the rural area, faster, fresher, with better refrigeration, better trucks, you will solve food security issues. You will. You don't need to plant everything. But there is the misunderstanding at many levels, from ministerial to policymakers, that food security really means we have to grow our own food. So the big argument that I had to look at really was the issue about corn. When we were in the middle of COVID and I was in the National Recovery Council, I had a briefing from, I think Felcra, one of these people came in and said, oh yeah, YB, don't worry, we're gonna solve food security. Ayam tak cukup, jagung, right? Don't worry, we will grow jagung.
The duck, yeah.
Right now, we'll grow the corn.
Yeah.
Right? Then we don't have to rely on import. I told him, look, if we are good at growing corn, where do I grown it 50 years ago? We're good at rubber. We're good at palm oil, right? All you do is you grow what you're good at and you sell and you trade, you buy corn, But you do need to grow a certain percentage if there's a glut in the world on corn. So what's that percentage? Your own supply. 10-20%. If your pot is very good, the people have money to buy, it's okay. Food security is not about growing 100% of corn that you need or 50%. It's around 20%.
So the whole idea of SSR for the different types of food, the understanding has to be more comprehensive than looking at the abject number. Like, there you go, 80%, now we're in trouble.
That's right. But because agriculture industry in Malaysia, the sector is full of questions about subsidies, price control, monopolies by
You've been at it for
bananas.
quite some time on,
Yeah,
on
I know, but
dismantling monopoly.
no, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's not an easy thing to change overnight.
Let's talk about the budget. When it comes to agricultural sector and food security, do you think some allocations or some thinking is going to be done in this budget for this sector?
No, to me, again, I think, of course, most politicians, because the people perceive food security to be these kind of issues, right?
Yeah.
That is to plant your thing. I would think that the best way to say, okay, we're going to allocate X amount to increase our supply of things that we're short in terms of food to X target. And that to me is responsible. Then you can make the people feel more secure, even though the reality is we should focus on making people's disposable income better.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Then you don't have to worry lah. I mean, if kalau jagung naik 2 sen, 3 sen, 10 sen, 20 sen, your gaji naik berapa ringgit, you can still cover. You know, it's not an insecure food position.
Yeah.
But since people relate food security to planting your own food,
Yeah.
allocate lah something for that, so that people punya perception pun dia rasa seronok sikit. It's not necessarily good for policy, but it's good for the perception and confidence, which is essential for every economy.
Okay, let's look at disposable income since you brought that up. Widening the tax base has always been the key feature of any government. They have failed. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Every single point in time until now, they have failed. What makes you think that this budget, this year that's going to be tabled 2 days from now, is going to be a little bit different in terms of the active participation of increasing the tax base?
Okay, increasing the tax base means you have to pay people, more and more people above 3,600 lah. Then they start to pay tax.
Which is
right?
consistent with what Rafiz is trying to do with progressive wage
No,
policy.
I understand. Rafiz and I work on this policy for a very long time. So
Yeah.
I'm fully supportive of what he wants to do. And it's the right thing to do. If you get more people earning 3,600 and above, then they start to pay tax, then the government's revenue becomes much better. At the moment, the personal income tax, we are collecting around 30 to 40 billion a year, right? Which is very small, you know, because only about 15 to 16% of the population actually pay any personal income tax.
Yeah.
That means everybody else earning below 3,600. That's shocking now. So the obvious solution is to move up the bottom people, higher grade, higher earnings. And on the economic level, it's very simple. As you earn more for the bottom, right? Say someone's getting 2,000 a month. Now we restructure the whole wage system. Now they're earning 2,005. You know how that 500 come about? The government can go and subsidize the employer 50%, or they can slowly force the employees to pay more. That means the employees earn less, right? When you do that,
You're going to get a lot of hesitancy
no. My
in
father's
terms
a
of
businessman, please.
MEF and all these other people.
No, I understand, but they also need to understand. When the poor gets a bump in their pay, they don't go to Disneyland in Paris or, you know, buy the Louis Vuitton shirt or whatever. Do they make shirts? I don't know.
No, yeah.
You know, but they don't buy luxury things, right? They consume the goods internally in Malaysia. You know, they can't even afford to go to Bangkok.
No,
or
even our
Singapore.
station, even leaving the state is a
No,
big question
betul.
mark. Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, this is the reality, right? So employers shouldn't complain terribly. I mean, they will complain because they're doing business and the economy is not that great, right? What I'm saying, I'm not suggesting we increase by $500. I'm just telling you, in theory, if you increase $500, the poor people have $500 of disposable income that will recirculate in the local economy. It's not going to Singapore. It's not going to some private bank in Switzerland, right? It stays here. So paying locals the lowest better helps the local producers more business.
You're consistent with what Amir Maidin was talking about.
Yeah.
He as an employer can increase his own wages, but that would make him uncompetitive.
That's
but
right.
if there is a top-down mandated approach by the government, the industry goes up slowly, then he's okay.
Lord, rather before I became an MP, I was a lawyer, corporate lawyer, and many of my clients are rich people. You know, of course they're happy, but they have their problems. You know, but I keep asking, you know, why do you need another 3 cars or another 5 or another 4 houses, right? You know, for the super rich, I have a few very super rich clients. They're a bit better. You know, they will come and tell me, yeah, you know, I only can play golf once a day. I can only eat 3 meals, you know. So I don't need I can pay people better, right? So we need this kind of enlightened business people to say, yeah, you know, we have to contribute back. You know, I mean, you can't keep oppressing the poorest and expect to live in a secure world, right? I mean, you keep oppressing people, people become desperate, then you go and hire more bodyguards to look after you. Or you live in London, right? You remote control your company here. That shouldn't be the way a good Malaysian, patriotic Malaysian businessman should think in those terms. He must think how to make the country more middle class, everybody elevate upwards.
Okay,
right?
let's now focus on that whole idea of you consuming more, you raise the B40, then in theory you can talk more about consumption tax even further. Right now, SST gets about 35 billion. When we had GST 1.0, we were getting about 44 billion with over 20 billion in refunds. Whatever it is, it's still a sizable amount, okay? Do you think GST has to come back as soon as possible? Maybe not in this budget because that's a part, but generally speaking.
Okay, I think the GST is a better tax system, but during Najib's time, they put it at 6% was crazy. You know, I think that was one of the main reasons why he lost the election, other than 1MDB and all the other thing, right? But, you know, I thought the GST would be a better system, but we have to reduce it to 3%.
But I thought the collection itself is going to cost the government 1 to 2%. So if you put it at 3, you're essentially earning net 1.
Yeah, so what you do is, what we learn this is very simple. We look at the Singapore model. I know a lot of people don't like to compare, but they are
I love to compare. I mean, why not?
They are driven on big data. They are policy driven, right? I mean, they are. So you look at how Singapore implemented. If I remember, it was 2%. And then over a period of a year, as the economy grows, then they can find it easier to tax people higher and higher. Now it's probably 9% or something like that. And people don't really complain that much, you know. So again, you start with a low base and you go up and up in tandem with the wage going up. As long as the wages outpace the by 1 or 2%, most people will not complain.
Yeah.
Right? But let me go back to the issue of why we need to pay the poor more wages. It's very simple. Say I work for a shoe factory, and my wages went up by $500. I will go and take my kids go eat KFC, right? The KFC guy got a $500 bum. He's going to buy my shoe. You understand? I eat KFC, he buy my shoe. So this money, when employees pay people, and is captured for the poor and rotates in this, circulates in this economy, increases the shoemaker's sales, increases KFC sales. It's really good.
What I don't see anybody opposing this other than the capital owners, other than the business leaders. Is that the reality of things right now?
No, I think business owners, you know, everyone is struggling. You know, the last few months has not been as hot as we thought it would be. You know, we were looking at a recovery from COVID, and then, you know, there's still hyperinflation around the world. So I think business owners are worried. Not to say they're wrong, because they're on the ground. But we need that kind of conversation. And we need to talk to them and say, look, you know, okay, 500 tak boleh lah. But surely $100 can, right? Then they'll say, okay, you pandai sangat, you want to increase 100, you boleh bayar RM50 lah. Right? Then the government said, okay, I contribute 50, you contribute 50. Within 6 months of this circular, he'll get back in increased sales in shoes, increased sales in KFC to get back his $50. But you must hold their hand. You must have a plan. You must talk to them. You must communicate. Right? That is crucial to me. But if we cut corruption, we save subsidy, then we can take this money, support the $50.
How does it feel like having the need to criticize your own colleagues right now, being a backbencher?
Well, I am super busy. Okay, I'm the chairman of the.
Speaking of which,
MDV.
So we're doing this in MDV right now, yeah.
So I'm chairman of a select committee on international relations and trade. So I have to travel a lot more outside. My constituents miss me, so God bless them.
One of the largest, in fact.
I'm really tired. I mean, I've got bags, you know, that some Korean beautician need to sort out. Okay, I'm traveling a lot. I also have IPU duty. I've got human rights duty. I've got yeah, it's a lot. But I am also, you know, I know my fiscal stuff. I know my budget stuff.
Yeah.
So I know Rafizi is trying very hard to restructure things, and it's never easy in a unity government. You know what is priority. So the unity government really need to sit down and talk amongst themselves more and more. But you know, they are strange bedfellows, and after a year or close to a year, I hope they're better now lah. You know, so I can only see positive things going ahead. You know, for instance, like the UMNO MPs, UMNO ministers will want something, right? They want to focus on a certain sector. The AMANA guys want to do something, and the DAP want to do something. So I think it's just getting to know each other more and more. And you can see it from the election results. We are actually doing better.
Yes.
Right? So it shows cohesion of team spirit. Once you have that team spirit done, then you can imagine the years to come, it should be clear.
Final question will be on Sabah Sarawak. They are demanding more right now, rightfully so, in fact, and because of the fact that we've been neglecting them, Semenanjung, for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 decades. And they are now in a position where they are kingmakers, let's face it, right?
Yep.
What's in store for them in this budget, you think?
I think, you know, if Sabah Sarawak asks for more allocation, we can give them more allocation, but we have to, how do we put it? We have to reduce some of it in another way. In other words, so for instance, Sabah Sarawak is very keen on their own education system. And for rightly or wrongly, they have some say, you know. I mean, if they want to recognize, you know, those Chinese certificates, or they want to have more English schools, I think there is some level of freedom there, right? So if they're asking for more autonomy, we can give them, but they've got to take on less budget. For instance, say they're asking for education.
Something has to give lah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah lah. So, but the bottom line is, say we have committed to spend 5-10 billion on Sarawak, right, next year, for DVAX or an operating. If they want freedom, it's easier for us to give 10 billion to them, but they make the call. Rather than Putrajaya call and say, oh yeah, this sekolah ni build here, cikgu ni macam ni, curriculum ni macam ni. So I think they'll be happy to get the same amount, but with more autonomy. So that's something that can be negotiated between them. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the government.
Yeah.
But I think that should be able to placate the issue of, you know, underdevelopment on their part, right?
Okay, 3 things that you think the rakyat should look at or look forward to in this budget or keep an eye on?
Well, not the rakyat so much lah. I mean, for I think the one that is important for the technocrats like us, the bankers and people, economists, is of course revenue projection, right? Because, you know, a budget is a projection of the future. If the revenue projection is accurate, then it's easy to meet those budgets. So we will always question, is the government projecting overtly optimistic or pessimistic?
You tend to make a point again and again on this, particularly on corporate tax revenue.
Yeah, you know, absolutely.
We always over budget.
Yeah, we have to, because look, if the numbers come out again this year and say, look, oh, we expect to collect corporate tax by 10% increase, but at the same time you're saying the growth is a 4%. Tak betul lah, you know not. Yeah. I'm not. I understand they need to dress up budget because it's a bit of a crystal ball punya, you know, projection issue. But in times of crisis, in times of where we are trying to change things, some honesty is better. Honesty and clarity. Then people say, oh, it's logical. Because if I know, for instance, I'm the minister and I say, oh, next year we're going to collect 100 billion, but I know deep down inside I can only collect 80. But then I go on and prepare the budget for 100 billion. Susah lah, is disruptive on the targets, achievement and payout and all that kind of thing.
And people will penalize you because you did not meet your revenue targets. Okay, anyway, that's number 1.
No, the bankers will penalize you. The economists, the analysts will penalize you lah, because but then they have a 1 year to see the result. I think most people like, oh, last year they cakap berapa? They tend to forget. But to me, I think an honest approach is the best, and to all praise and all tahniah lah, okay, to the government, is they are pushing through a budget responsibility act.
Yes.
That is fantastic.
Finally, right?
Finally. So I think the Madani budget will, together this act that we're going to push through, is going to be debated this week. Sometime I don't know when.
It's
and
fine.
pass.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, brother. It's really, you know.
We've been talking about this for 10 years now.
I know, right?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I
so
tell you.
okay, kita ada inspirasi, ada commitment buat budget responsible. Then show it lah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
By Friday, tunjuk lah betul-betul responsible.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will then sakit lah. We have to complain pun susah.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
So that's number one.
Number one, yeah.
Budget projection was good. DVEX, development expenditure.
Yeah.
You know we have to borrow 4% interest rate, 4.5% bonds to pay for DVEX. For God's sake, the DVEX must always return in terms of economic multiplier, in terms of profits, in terms of economic generation. Kalau kita pinjam 4%, we have to return 12%.
Yeah.
Right? If 4% we return 8, ngam-ngam.
Yeah.
Kita bayar interest rate,
Yeah.
4% bayar
Enjoyment.
pokok.
Yeah.
Then after 25 years, pokok dah bayar.
Yeah.
Okay? But if we do 12%,
Yeah.
fantastic lah. Then we have actual growth in revenue.
But what planet do we see in the
Okay.
country achieving?
How to achieve this 12%? Ya, memang susah lah. But the first start is, jangan tipu lah, jangan curi lah. Budget tu, no, I mean if it's a 100 million bridge, build for 100 million, janganlah markup 200 million. Then your 4% also cannot achieve, brother. You understand? Yeah. So I think the government is not supposed to make money. It's not a business. Yeah. But if they borrow at 4, they must deliver 8 so that we can pay the 4 interest rate boleh bayar, and then the other additional 4 to bayar pokok after 20 years, bayar habis. I think that's what I want to see. DVEX that is priced carefully, open tender, betul-betul buat open tender. I mean, nobody can achieve 12% return lah.
Yeah,
Okay?
but still, if you keep
But
to these
8% is the
principles,
target lah.
Yeah.
So I want discipline. I want transparency, I want accountability, and I want open tender. So those two things. Third one, this is the public lah. Now we balik pada rakyat lah. Sebagai technocrat, kita worry about projection of revenue. We worry about DVEX punya multiplier and the pricing of the DVEX. Now for the people. What is the people going to get? I think for the bottom 40, my understanding of Madani, compassionate, you know, to help the poorest, right? Address the poverty issue. Then you really need to focus more and more on welfare. Yeah? And then we got to ask our brothers and sisters who are well off to understand that your sacrifice of 5-10% tak dapat subsidy kurang sikit tu is actually helping the one that need it most. And by doing that, I think you can get, I think all races instinctively understand that helping the poor is your duty. You know? But we are not here to help the super rich, the elite, the cronies. One. No, we have to cut that one out. But it needs a sacrifice by the upper middle class a little bit. But in return, what do they get? More safer environment. Right? They see their neighbors are doing well, friendlier. You know, that is good. That is really good. To me, that budget has to focus on how to help the poorest. That's it.
Right. Thank you very much. That was YB Wang Chen. If you want to learn more about the conversations that we've just had, you can rewatch this interview on astroawin.com. There's plenty of resources there on the budget as well. You can also watch my show Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani. Also on all of Astro's platforms, just search for Belanjawan 2024 or Budget 2024 or search my name, Ibrahim Sani, on all our platforms. Until then, thanks very much for joining us. Catch you in the next one.